So China has made it relatively easy for companies to come in and put money into their economy. I mean, they've increased foreign direct investment by they've doubled it over the past 10 years, increased it by 10% last year alone. What they've done, though, is put up a bunch of obstacles that keep companies from just being able to withdraw the money on a whim. Things like, do you need lots of approvals to be able to pull money out? It's difficult to convert the RMB, the yuan currency, into US dollars and sort of transfer it to other assets. And they're doing this partly to sort of limit the kind of capital flight that a lot of Asian economies saw in the late 90s during the Asian currency crisis.
You know, it's interesting because, I mean, the key issue, I think, in many respects for the future of China's role in the global economy is the opening up of its capital account. And this is just a major challenge. People talk about, you know, these steps to have yuan trading, for example, in Hong Kong, as some move towards this. But stories like this remind us, I think, that in many respects it is still a very closed economy, and we are a long way from seeing the yuan act like the euro or the dollar.
The other problem, too, is the regulations. I mean, we're very used to a sort of a steady regulatory regime, despite all the uncertainty we're seeing currently in the U.S. A lot of the CFOs and treasurers I talked to that deal in China said the problem there is there's the regulations as written, but then there's a question of how they're interpreted. And it's a different interpretations versus the national level, the provincial level, and then at the local level. So it becomes very murky.
Well, again, that's all part of me. I come at this from somebody who covers currency markets a lot, and it just seems to me that these factors in terms of what become reserve currencies and the idea that the yuan might one day sort of join the ranks of these reserve currencies is you've got to have the rule of law, the predictability of contracts and things like that. And if there's ambiguity around these sorts of relationships, it's only going to hinder the capacity to grow. Does it affect, though, investors? I mean, this great success, as you point out, in attracting foreign investment in, is it giving anybody cold feet in terms of whether to keep putting money into the country?
There's no cold feet. I mean, you have to remember that even a slowing China still grows at 8% a year. So we'll soon be the largest economy in the world, I think, in the next 20 years or something. That's the expectation.
But what do you do with your profits? I mean, you have to keep reinvesting them in China.
And as long as people feel comfortable doing that, it's not really a problem. But you run into a problem if you're someone like Kodak, where you've gone bankrupt and you need to access $300 million in China. It'll take months to get it out.
Absolutely.
There's rumors, I think Nortel had $50 million Chinese sale. Yeah, and then they haven't been able to bring it out for 3 years, from what I'm hearing. So just get stuck there. And that's
but I mean, again, it's all built around this notion that, well, China's going to keep growing at 8% every year, and therefore it's okay. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. If at some point the doubts get raised about that, and of course there's a number of bearish hedge funds who have been making the case, not very successfully unfortunately for them for the last 2 or 3 years, that this is a treadmill that will have to end at some point. But if you buy into that argument, then you really do have a problem. Is there any risk for companies that have locked themselves in there, have betted on this perpetual growth, that at some point the model falls apart?
I think there is that risk, but no one's really anticipating it tomorrow. For the Chinese government, they've sort of taken encouragement from the fact that the financial crisis didn't hit them as hard, that they weren't as impacted by the Asian currency crisis because of capital control. So there's no anything sort of influencing them to just loosen those controls. I don't think companies are really paying that much attention to what happens on the other side of investing the money in China.